Excellent. Welcome everybody to tonight's meeting. Today is Tuesday, September 24th, 2024. This is the meeting for the Math and Science Academy's Board of Directors. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 6 p.m. Brian, will you read our mission and vision, please?
So our mission, or also our vision, to be an innovative, sustainable model of academic excellence for all students that creates well-rounded, lifelong learners and global citizens. Our mission is we provide accelerated and inclusive curricula and instruction in all subject areas with an emphasis on math and science.
Jules?
We would like to acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the land of the Ochite Shakoi, the people of the Seven Council Fires, and the Wapikute Band. It is within MSA's responsibility as an academic institution to disseminate knowledge about Indigenous peoples and their history with this land. MSA works to build relationships with Native American students and their families through academic pursuits and historical recognition.
Caitlin? Shawnee says we're not streaming.
It might just be on delay.
Let me check, because it says it's streaming.
Shawnee, are we streaming yet?
It's working on my computer.
Okay.
She must just be on the delay.
Yeah, Oregon. Okay, thank you. Roll call of members, Wendell Slutton here, Isaac Leonardi.
Here.
Sarah Harms.
Yeah.
Tamara Brooks is absent tonight. Brian Linsmeyer.
Here,
Jules Kinkle.
Here.
Mary Yap.
Here.
Dan Ellingson.
Here.
Kari Kerner.
Here.
And our student representatives are here today. Tonight with us is Nneka Amadi. Welcome. We'll start with open forum. I did not receive any requests, so we will skip over. An approval for the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I will motion to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Discussion?
I just have a quick question. 10E states that the committee did not meet, but, and this may end up in an amendment, so that's why I'm asking it this way. But 9B, C, and D state that the governance committee is recommending that they be passed. But if the governance committee didn't meet in September, I guess I'm confused.
So we typically do now 2 months worth. So we, at
Gotcha.
the last meeting,
Okay,
talked about, and then,
thank you. I wasn't at the last meeting, so I wasn't quite sure how that worked. The last board meeting, so.
yeah.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye.
Okay.
Abstain? Opposed? Opposed? Sorry. And abstain? Motion passes unanimously. Are there any conflicts of interest in tonight's meeting? Hearing none, we'll move to the approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I can move.
Motion moved by Dan, second.
I'll second it.
Jules? Discussion?
I need just a couple more of my names. I abstained from the minutes from before, but the other ones I think was just maybe copy pasted. So if I could be put back in the other.
So you abstained from?
I abstained for approving the minutes because I missed those meetings.
Mhm.
But the other ones I was there, so I think maybe just put my name in the, I think I voted with the rest of the group on most everything else.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Just
so
my
you're-
name wasn't
okay.
there, yeah.
Okay.
So that
That
was-
was,
that
We'll
that
get
was
that
fine.
fixed, yeah.
Thank you.
No problem.
Yep.
Let's see.
Oh.
So starting at F, 9F, include Dan Ellingson into the yes.
Yeah, I think I was pretty much with the group.
Yeah.
Do that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dan.
Yep.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? We have abstains. Moving on to board recognition. So we have our student reps today, so I'm gonna let Dr. Hinton speak on that.
Okay, so we are welcoming our student reps. They don't have an official swearing in, but we want to welcome. This is Neka Amadi. She is joining us and was elected last spring. Abigail Wamadas is currently playing a volleyball game. So she is supporting MSA in a different way this evening. But we want to just go ahead and welcome our new student reps who were elected this spring and give them the opportunity to be here, and can we shake your hand? That's kind of a little bit.
Welcome.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Welcome. Welcome, congrats.
Welcome.
Nick, if you have any questions about how things are working, feel free to raise your hand and ask. Definitely meet some time with Dr. Hinton and myself, and we'll kind of get you going on this. So, but we're looking forward to hear from you and the students. All right. Consent agenda. Is there a motion to pass the consent agenda?
Oh, make a move to pass the consent agenda with, you have one very minor adjustment that needs to happen in the annual report on page 6, where we have our board members listed. I was not seated in June of 2021. I have not been around for that long.
It was August of 23, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. I will make that correction.
I can second it, and I don't normally we just approve it, but I had a question on the annual report. Instead of pulling it out, can I just ask you during your executive director?
I was
update?
gonna say that's how it should be.
Sure, I mean. if
Instead
it's- if it's-
of pulling it out. It's
just-
not gonna,
okay.
yeah,
All right.
it's not gonna change the report.
Okay.
It's a motion to approve the consent agenda with the amendment to the annual report. Okay, motion by Kinkle, second by Ellingson. Alright, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion passes. Board and administrative reports. First, we'll hear from the students. So Nika, this is your time to inform us of what's going on with the students.
Okay, so for the first student report of this year, I just wanted to talk a little bit about new clubs and activities at our school and also some student achievements. Starting off with Asian Student Union, which is run by Saad Wajidi and Anjali Patel in 11th grade. And basically their mission is to create a safe and welcoming educational space for all Asians and supporters. They plan on working to create a more representative Asian community within MSA and grow our school's understanding and love of Asian culture. And next we have UNICEF Club, which is run by Anaga Matada and Ishan Katare, also in 11th grade. And the United Nations Children's Fund overarching mission this year is to support UNICEF's global principles of advocating for the protection of children's rights, helping adolescents meet their basic needs, and expanding opportunities for children worldwide to reach their full potential. They plan on achieving this mission by hosting meetings and also like door-to-door efforts to help fundraise and also engage in other fundraisers to support the children and UNICEF's mission. Next is HOSA, which is run by Claire Nelson and Ruth Casa in 11th grade. And HOSA is an organization that stands for Health Occupation Students of America, or Future Health Professionals. And it's a career and technical organization that's dedicated to empowering future health professionals to lead in the global health community. And it's also recognized by the U.S. Department of Education and has over 200,000 members globally. And it's a great opportunity for students who are interested in the health sciences to prepare for college and their future profession. And on September 17th, they had a state officer from the Minnesota HOSA board come in and talk about what HOSA is and encourage students to join and talk about scholarships that students could also potentially get. And MSA's debate team is making a comeback this year. I don't know if any of you are aware, but there was previously a debate team at MSA, but it's now been made re-available for students to participate in. And the 2024-2025 team will compete in Minnesota State High School League tournaments and other local and online competitions. Debate is a great way for students to learn argumentation and critical thinking, as well as research and overall communication skills. And I made sure to mention the names of the students because a lot of time and energy is put into these activities, and obviously they're bettering our school and offering their peers with the opportunity to grow their learning and just get involved more in our community, so that's good. And for student recognition, this year MSA had two National Merit semifinalists who were Ethan Jones and Rigo Tesoro in 12th grade. And this is an incredible accomplishment, obviously. I'm sure all of you are aware of the National Merit Recognition Program. And it means that basically they were the highest scoring PSAT takers, being the top 1% out of 1.4 million program entrants. So, yeah, they've also gained the opportunity to win, obviously, the National Merit College Scholarship. So that's a great achievement, and I wanted to make sure to recognize them. And that's all I have for you guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Update from the board. At our last work session, the board spent time working on our goals. Dr. Hinton and Tammy Brooks are in the process of writing them into SMART goals, and they will be discussed at our next work session and next meeting. Dr. Hinton?
Okay. I just have a report on the opening of school. We currently have 722 students enrolled at MSA. And we are excited that our percentage of non-white students has risen to 68.4%. So that is an increase from last year and a welcome increase. Our special education percentage is still about 6.9, which is hovered right in that 7, 8, 9% depending. We have just over 4% of our students have 504 plans, and just slightly more than 2% have EL services. In addition, we have about 8.9% of our students qualifying for free and reduced. That number could change a little bit as the applications for educational benefits come in. An exciting change is that 20% of our 6th grade class direct qualified for educational benefits, so we're seeing a change in our recruiting. We're bringing in more students who have economic need. So that's something we've been working on for a while, and so we're starting to see fruits of that labor. It'll take a while before it changes the percentage school-wide, but it is making a difference. Our total weighted ADM as of Friday was 686.16. That's our total ADM. Our total weighted ADM is 804. Weighted ADM students in grades 7 through 12 are multiplied by 1.2. They get a higher factor in terms of their funding than elementary students. So that's how we get that. We are full, but we still have an average class size of 20.5. There are some classes that are bigger, and we still have quite a small space, but we are making it work. Highlights from the kickoff of the year. We have 722 students, which is almost exactly what we were predicting of 720 last spring. The EDM has shifted based on PSEO counts, but our number is landing right at 686.6 after accounting for PSEO enrollment. I'm really excited that our prediction models that we worked so hard on last spring came out, because we were saying somewhere that our number would be right between 680 and 690, so we're dead on. So that made me happy to see that those predictions were effective, so we'll be able to have those tools in the future as we work on our ADM in the spring, because that's a hard number to predict. Very excited, we have a phenomenal group of staff, we're proud of all of our new hires and our current staff. In addition to the impressive skill set that they are bringing us, we are also have increased diversity in our staff. So that's something that we have been working on and we have achieved. Our students are already engaging in their work and deep into their learning, just 3 weeks in. It's been, and that actually was happening last week too. I mean, once they got settled, they're doing a great job. Our staff is currently working on developing priority standards, and they will use those to develop the proficiency scales for measuring student proficiency, and this is a critical part of our push to do bias-free grading. Our initial MCA data from last year shows the continued trend of each of our student subgroups outperforming the highest performing subgroup at the state level. So it's still not, we still have some preliminary numbers, but we are looking like that's going to come out just about the same for this year. So we're excited about that. And then I already mentioned this, but we are pleased that our diversity among our student population continues to grow. So we have significantly higher diversity here than in District 833. So that says something about who we attract and that they feel welcome. Our challenges right now continue to be space. We have all the full-time classroom teachers in their own classrooms, but some of the rooms are quite small for even 20 students, so it's tight right now. There are some classes that are at 25 or higher. Mr. Sutton has the biggest at 52. That's a band, so we're not going to count that. And then our other challenge that we're still continuing to work with is transportation. Our buses are increasingly on time, and the parent pickup is improving, but we still have late buses every day in the afternoon. We are still encouraging everyone to please, please, please turn right off of Woodbury Crossing onto Pioneer, and then you can change directions at the roundabout. That is speeding it up, because what ends up happening is the traffic is backing up onto Pioneer because the people can't get all the way through and back out. So when they're waiting to make that left turn, people can't come in to pick up their kids. So that's something that we're encouraging and have had pretty good success. Most of our families are doing it. There's a few that still don't. But let's kick off the school this year.
Any questions for Dr. Hinton?
I had a separate one. On the traffic, are we able to put a sign? Like, I've seen some of those no left turn from these hours.
They won't allow
They
it.
won't-
It's
they
a
won't.
city thing, so
Yeah.
I've asked, they've said no. So instead, we've got a sandwich board down there begging them. I go down there sometimes and turn, most of the kids will turn right. There are parents that look at me and turn left, so. There's nothing, we don't have any enforcement power out there, but, you know, it does go faster when people do turn right. It does because you don't have to wait so long.
It's really not that out of your way.
It's just a
roundabout
block
there
and
yeah.
come back out, but.
Just out of curiosity, with our MCA data, how are we looking year over year? So like, as far as, are we seeing,
It's like,
you know, your 8th grade scores being here, and then 2 years later, our 10th grade scores, are they increasing? Are we seeing some of that?
I haven't done a full data analysis
Okay.
on all of that yet. That will be one of the board reports, it just hasn't all been done yet.
Okay, and then so a week ago at the finance committee, and in the report, it stated that our ADM was at 677, and now we're at 686, which I understand is last Friday. What do you attribute that 10 ADM student difference
It's
to?
because we're finishing getting all the student schedules for PSEO. It's not a change in the number of kids, it's the amount that we're able to build a state. So it takes time sometimes to get the schedules from the students, because then we have to calculate what percentage of their time is at MSA and what percentage of their time is at their other college. So the non-century students, we have to rely on the students to give us their schedules,
Okay.
and sometimes that takes a little bit of time.
Remember, when the floor is open, it'd probably be best to signal that you're ready to speak. Jules?
Yeah, so what I was wondering, we were talking about this with the transportation and trends we're seeing already. I know they're doing the traffic study down there. Can we take some of this information of what we're seeing in terms of trends here and forward that? Because I know it's not exactly the same, obviously, but it could inform in terms of, hey, this is what we've noticed with our parents. Here's the number of people we have. What can we do as like a forward-thinking, planning kind of motion so that we're not running into the same kind of hiccups potentially?
Yeah, so they are very well aware of what's going on over here.
Okay.
So they are very well aware of what's going on over here. What we did have to provide them with, and we did provide them with, was the percentage of students who take the bus, percentage of students who are dropped off. We had to do a calculation as to how many students we thought might be in a car, because there might be 2 students in a family, that doesn't mean 2 cars.
True, yes.
You know,
Okay.
so we had to do, there's this whole calculation that we did and submitted to them. So we're hoping to get initial results from the traffic study tomorrow.
Okay.
I don't know, fingers crossed, that's what they say, so we'll see.
Thank you.
I had a question, and it was, and maybe we don't need an answer tonight, but as I was going through the annual report, I saw the math scores for the PSAT, and it looked like it was about half of our students are ready for college, and I was surprised to see that number
Yeah.
so low.
So, and that was it, which grade, the 10th?
I'd say about 10th and 11th, one was
Yeah.
53, one was 49, so it seemed, I would have guessed much higher for the Math and Science Academy,
Yeah,
ready for
so,
college.
yeah, we're still working on that,
Okay.
taking a look at that. The NCA scores are better
Okay,
than the PSAT.
yeah.
But it's also
Our-
that 10th
our-
and 11th grade group also has a large number of kids who entered in 9th grade.
Okay. The evidence reading and writing is in the 80s. That looked much
Yeah.
better, yeah.
So, we've been doing a lot of work around our reading.
Okay.
And so one of the things that we're looking at in the PLCs is taking a look at the initiatives that we've implemented for reading. Because last year, only 11 students were not proficient, and 8 of them were within 1 or 2 points of being proficient. But we did that, we started the reading support class where we took all students as they entered and put them in through a reading course. And then those 11 that didn't make it are now having an intensive intervention with Ms. Burgraff. So we're hoping to continue that work and then the study that we've been doing around science of reading to continue to improve that. So that's paying off. But now the next switch is how do we match that with math?
Yeah.
So that's one of our initiatives that we're working on this year. But yeah, I was a little surprised.
Any other questions? Great discussion. Let's go on to the Finance Committee reports. Isaac.
All right, so gonna go through the highlights here of the finance report. So it was our first meeting of the year, so we had a little bit new group of people on the committee. So we just had introductions, talked about the committee first. We will usually meet on the Tuesdays before the board meeting, sometimes on the Thursdays, but we'll usually meet on the week before the board meeting. As far as the finance reports for the most recent reports, we went through the requirements we need to meet. So we are good on our bond requirements with 92 days cash on hand, meeting the 60-day requirement. For the number there, the cash balance was about 1.9 million, which includes the 1.4 required amount. We also talked about the calculation for the debt service coverage ratio. So right now our number is 1.26, which meets the 1.0 required rate. And then Dustin and creative planning are just kind of making sure that that's calculated for us. For the ADM, we talked about that a little bit already. When the report ran at the end of August, we had the 677 number. So that will just kind of keep being updated through that. Even with those updates though, with the changes in contracted services and state aid holdback, the working budget from the latest report was still at 67,000, which was right around the 68,000 planned at the start. I think the next part is just kind of checking little things that all make sense at the start of the year. Like there are some things that you have to kind of prepay at the start of the year that will eventually make their money back. The next big thing for AFC committee is give to the max. So that will happen in November, so there will be some planning before that in November. For expansion, we'll talk a lot more about expansion later today. I think the one thing to add is we just kind of talked about being cautious if there's any kind of pre-approval that we have to consider as a board for that. For the audit, it's not due till December, but we have it scheduled for the 21st and the 22nd. It would be good to get it done sooner for the bondholders during the expansion process.
October.
Yep, the 21st and 22nd of October. Yep, thank you. And we'll have the same group, Abdo, that completed it last year. One big thing to note is, so in the last spring and early summer, we were kind of thinking of a surplus of around 20 to 30,000. In the last meeting, we had it as 100,000. So that number has changed back to 25,000 as the number we're expecting at the end of the year. So one line item was found to be charged to the building company when it should have been the insurance claims report. So as of the last meeting, we're expecting that 25,000 surplus for our financial year 24.
Cool.
All right, I think that covers anything. So questions, discussion?
Hearing none, would you like to make a motion to approve finances?
Yes. I move to approve the August financial report.
Is there a second? Mary Ann? She raised her hand. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion passes. Thank you, Isaac. Governance committee did not meet in September. Do you know when your next meeting will be?
Next meeting will be September 30th, so on Monday.
On Monday. Thank you. And on to action items.
September 30th, Monday.
Yep. So tonight we have a representative from JB Bang here to give us an update on expansion.
Where's a good spot for them?
Well, I think we should probably pull those.
No.
We'll give them, do you want us to pull those front chairs out?
Yeah.
This is Justin Fincher, he's our
There's a camera right
representative.
there, so if you want to go this way maybe.
You can get back of your head.
There you go.
There you go.
Welcome, Justin.
Good evening, everyone. So I sent a handout to Kate. I don't know if everybody's had a chance to review.
Yeah, they just got these, so we can kind of walk them over.
Small packet and a big packet.
Yeah, so there's a lot of information here, so we'll just try to keep it just a high-level update, and then we can drill down where we need to, if there's any questions. But I'll apologize in advance too, there's a lot of kind of numbers and spreadsheets. I think that's how we like to track things. So just starting off, I'm looking at this first handout. This is the pre-development budget. It should look somewhat familiar.
It's the thinner packet.
Yep, we looked at this last time. I cheated and printed it on 11 by 17, so. Overall, I just wanted to kind of show you where we're at in terms of those pre-development expenses. I think we're tracking just fine with what we had originally budgeted previously, which was the $180,000. We are kind of reallocating some of those line items based off of kind of what those final contracts come in at. But the good news is again, that we're still tracking on that 180,000. And we've made good progress on just overall site due diligence at the new site. So we've conducted what's called an ALTA survey, a topo survey, a tree inventory survey, lots of surveys, prelim and final plats. We've done the geotech report and analysis. We're actually getting the report hopefully end of this week, and we've done our kind of environmental assessment, at least that first step. So things are well underway on the site due diligence. The other thing to report here is if you look at row 22, this is somewhat good news. So initially we had talked about, next steps with the architect. We would have to release what's called bid package 1, which is the next step for the construction drawings. We've since worked with them on actually reducing that amount from the $640,000 down to $380,000, which is in that revised total column. So we're able to do that just by focusing more on what's called like the core and shell, so just really the structural engineering drawings in the footing and foundation package. We're not asking for approval of that today. I'm just kind of showing you an update that that's where those numbers sit. So again, I think overall we're tracking really well on that budget. Before I go to the next page, I'll just before I open it for questions, also just chime in that rows 14, 15, what's kind of highlighted in red, we weren't budgeting before, kind of an ALTA survey and a phase 1 assessment for your existing campus, which we will need to do for your financing. You guys did just do that in your last round of financing, but we'll just have to do it again. So we'll have to update those documents. So we're adding that budget in, but it doesn't exceed the $180,000 total. So before we go to the next page, I'll just see if there's any questions there.
So just so I'm understanding this correct, the original total is what you forecasted. What we see in the middle column, the reallocated, it's either subtracted based on parentheses or added based on no parentheses, and then the new is on the next one.
Correct.
Can you explain what an ALTA survey entails?
Oh, sure. So it's a certified survey that's done by a registered land surveyor. So they basically take the site survey information with the property boundaries, and then they'll actually look at the title commitment, which is basically just the land record of that piece of property to kind of research and review to make sure there's no easements, and if there are, to make sure that those are documented and you can visually see them on the ALTA survey. So that's the type of survey that's required for financing. It's pretty typical. So.
Any other questions?
I have a question. On line 22, the $260,000 that was reduced, will that be added back in at some point? Or does
Yeah,
it need to be done?
it will. Our line item for the architectural services hasn't changed. This is just that upfront commitment. So essentially, we're kind of pushing off some of the interior design conversation to after closing, basically, and that won't impact timeline at all. This was just kind of an effort to help reduce those upfront costs.
Got it.
So.
I think it's okay to go on.
We'll jump to the next spreadsheet. So this should look somewhat familiar. This is kind of just a revised board action summary. So column in gray is what we looked at previously with KU when we were kind of tracking those benchmarks and milestones for potential board actions. But what I'm adding here is kind of where we're currently tracking with our overall schedule, and then also trying to budget out what I'm calling a more maybe conservative schedule. So just big picture on this without looking even at the spreadsheet. We've since submitted our land use application into the city. We've been having check-in meetings with them for the past about month and a half or 2 months. And so those conversations are going well, but we're not as far along with the city's traffic study that we would like to have been. Initially, we weren't budgeting time for a traffic study. The city is requiring that because Bailey Road is a county road, and it requires their review and approval as well. So we've been kind of working through that process and waiting as patiently as we can for an update on the traffic report. And Kate mentioned, Dr. Hinton mentioned that we're hoping to have an update tomorrow on where they stand with that. But it was originally budgeted, they were supposed to take 6 weeks, and we're well beyond that. So the city has kind of said, before we can even proceed in scheduling a neighborhood meeting and scheduling the planning commission, city council, kind of those critical next steps, they would like to first get that traffic report in, review it, and kind of approve it internally with their staff and with the county before they even kind of present it to us and before they'll schedule those meetings. So that traffic study is kind of the bottleneck right now in terms of being able to move forward on the entitlements. So what we kind of did, if you draw your attention down to the entitlements section, we're kind of just breaking that down and trying to just throw out some scenarios on what that could look like. So that is row 13, you can see the traffic study. I think, best case, we're hoping early October to have that full final report. And then from there, that would allow us to schedule the neighborhood meeting, essentially that following week, so early October. And then that would get us into planning commission and city council by end of October. Initially, we were kind of budgeting late September, early October for that city council, so we're kind of pushing out from those original projections. And then the other big thing that wasn't previously contemplated is we do have to amend the comp plan. So every municipality has a comprehensive plan that's kind of their long-range direction for the city on where they want the city to be kind of developed and concentrated in terms of uses. That comp plan right now shows the Kindler site as what's called a rural estate, which is not steered towards an educational use. So we have to amend that comp plan, and that requires Met Council approval. There's two types of approvals. There's the full Met Council action versus an administrative approval. They've said, the city's agreed that it's an administrative approval, which expedites the process, but there's still, technically speaking, a 60-day window of time that it could take to get those full approvals. We're hoping that that can come sooner, but they are mandated to wait 60 days to basically wait for with the local jurisdictions. So they send notices to your surrounding neighbors in terms of the cities to see if they have any comment to this amendment. If these cities respond sooner, there's no sense, we don't need to wait around the full 60 days. So the hope is that we can get those responses sooner, but kind of budgeting, I think in this current estimate, 45 days, which would put us at end of November for your kind of full entitlements. And then from there, that allows your underwriter, R.W. Beard, to basically do the marketing on the bonds and start selling the bonds. They're not going to do that until we have entitlements. It's just, no investor is going to purchase those bonds without having secured entitlements. So trying to play out this scenario under this current estimate, under project delivery, we are kind of pushing out our schedule, which is unfortunate. We are still showing what we're calling a phase 1 delivery in August of next year, but I am kind of highlighting that we are only allowing then for a 7-month window for construction, which is incredibly tight. It's not to say that it can't be done, but that's if all of the stars align and we can really hit the ground running in late this year, early next year. So that's kind of what we're tracking for the first phase, and then the second phase, which would be the full delivery of the school, would happen basically January 1 of 2020. I'm sorry, I should say 2026, not 2025. So that's what we're looking for the current estimate, but and I should just add that I think we're going to know a lot more in the next 2 to 4 weeks on where we stand with the schedule. We are just really speculating without having confirmation from the city on the traffic study and when we're going to city council. Like, those are the critical next steps that we don't have definitive dates on. So I'm just trying to give you guys an update of kind of that range of where this could land. The third column, the conservative column, I'm kind of budgeting more time for getting that traffic study finalized, and then the subsequent neighborhood meetings, city council, and comp plan amendments. This would push out the schedule. I think we would still be able to turn over a partial delivery by late next year, basically end of December. It still only budgets 9 months for a construction period, which is still tight, but it's a little more comfortable. But acknowledging that with that conservative timeline, there would not be a TCO or a temporary certificate of occupancy by school start at the new location next year. So we're kind of playing in those kind of two parameters of what we think that standard timeline can be versus where it could go if this pushes out further. So there's a lot of information here, and I kind of, in these other handouts, we will get into a little more on kind of enrollment and what our underwriter, we have updates on the project budget and the financing, so, but I do want to pause there if there's any just questions on the overall schedule.
It's a comment, Justin. So I've had an opportunity to sit in on some of the meetings, and just kudos to JB Bang for continuing to push, our interest as best as they can. So I think that the two things that you mentioned are kind of beyond our control, if you will, that's messing up the schedule. I did make a comment at that meeting, which is only one, I'm only one person of the board, but I said, we're interested in getting that building as soon as possible, right? Because of all the constraints that we have with our existing facilities. So the thought was, if I understand correctly, we will have a building next year. It's just a matter of when we would move in terms of the month, right? The exact
Correct.
month. And that's based on the fact that we're still waiting for some of these, the city traffic study and this comp plan amendment, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, disappointing, right, to hear that it might be a little bit later, but my thought when hearing that the first time was I'd rather have a building and then administration works through a plan on how do we phase folks from these buildings over to that one throughout the year in a reasonable manner than waiting for another year, right? And then just saying, that's the easy option, just we'll wait one more year. But I think right now the point was teachers and students are still kind of struggling a
Right.
little bit with our existing facilities. So let's see how quickly we can get that sorted out.
Yep.
So one of the things that we looked at was, and what we'll recommend, because we will not, even when we do the lottery, we'll still be many, many months away from, construction will just be beginning, that we will request that we just continue the current matriculation pattern for one more year and not balloon the enrollment, because what we can't do, the risk is way too high to go ahead and take in several hundred more students and then run the risk that we can't educate them because there is no way they can fit in here. Right now, everybody's here, and they fit in, it's tight, but we're making it work. We couldn't make it work with hundreds more students, so we're not going to recommend bringing that number up. But that still then would allow us to move partway through the year, and Justin will take us through what that does with the financing. But the interest rate drop has helped us. So, anyway, sorry for interrupting.
Yeah, that's actually one of the really good updates. So if you go to the next page, another spreadsheet, but this one should be familiar too. This is what we call our project profile. So the option 4, the one all the way to the right, that's our kind of updated option that we're going to go over today. The previous 2 have been reviewed with you, with the board here previously. So yeah, the good news is, so RW Beard has provided an updated bond run, and based off of their pricing desk and guidance from them, they think rates have dropped substantially, so below 5%. And so what that does is basically the financing costs are obviously lower, so that provides a higher budget for your what I call your project costs. And to Kate's point, if you focus in on rows 39, there is a substantial add to the capitalized interest line item, but this is proving out that this basically extends the enrollment into that following year, like you were saying, Kate. So that number does go up, but the good news is that it can be afforded in the budget without having to reduce anywhere else. We've seen that on other projects, and from time to time, rates will continue to go up and you have to increase cap I, and it just puts more strain on your project budget because the numbers got to give somewhere. So overall, this is just a really good update, and and Kate and Dan can allude to this, but the rates are really good right now in this environment, and RW Beard is kind of suggesting or recommending that we should close as soon as we can because these rates are so doing so well. Can't really predict out what's going to happen early to mid next year. So the guidance from that, the underwriter, is basically time kills all deals. Let's try to get this thing closed, and I think this is a good testament to that. The other updates are under the hard cost. So with that lower interest rate, if you look at rows 5 and rows 8, we are able to afford a higher budget in your hard cost. And that comes just really good timing. So we don't have staff comments back from the city, but there's kind of been this kind of, I don't know what to say, but just a negotiation in terms of what the exterior of your building looks like. And if they come back and say they require this, what's called thin brick, just basically true brick material, that could substantially increase the cost to your hard cost. So this is just kind of proving out that we have some room in there to afford for that. And if that's not required, I mean, this is an open book hard cost budget, so the school can basically look for ways to spend in terms of maybe upgrading the finishes or upgrading, you guys don't have lockers, but there's all sorts of ways to add back to that budget, because it is, with the public charter schools, it is a pretty tight, bare bones budget. So I think it's good news to be able to afford more there. And then we are just kind of earmarking $1 million for what I'm calling city and county mandated improvements. So the county did draft a memo to the city in regards to this development. It wasn't a requirement, they were just recommendations, but basically alluding to that MSA will be required to do some type of improvements and tie-ins to Bailey Road through most likely a controlled intersection, which is a street light, a traffic light, and those are upwards of $450,000. We don't really know, it depends on the amount of turn lanes and things of that nature, but so that's one thing. And then another comment that the city had was in regards to roundabouts and adding roundabouts to streets that kind of abut your property. So just things that have started to come up during our staff review. So just kind of budgeting it in a separate line item, and we're not touching your project contingency, which is another good thing at this point in time. So I guess I'll stop there and see if there's any questions on the project budget.
I did have one on the previous page. When it comes to comp plan amendments, what do you typically hear from neighboring cities when it comes to reallocating property?
So in my experience,
Yeah.
nothing. I've only gone through the administrative approval, which we're doing here. It's really just a waiting game and having them take the time to review what's being proposed and respond. But from conversations with attorneys and other folks, typically what local, like your neighboring jurisdictions will look at like any potential impacts to traffic, to utilities and job creation. Met Council is kind of looking at all of those things when they're putting together these comp plans with cities. So seeing if there's any major impacts there, and it doesn't seem like there would be with this type of proposal. So does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Has the city been any concerns about taxes? I mean, if we're zero tax versus those houses property tax?
Not yet. It may come up during our entitlements through Planning Commission and City Council. We've had that on projects before, especially since this, with MSA and the building company being nonprofits, this will become a tax exempt property. I think a good case here is that this is farmland. I forget the name of the designation, but it's
The green acre tax?
it's the green acre tax. So the taxes on this 36 acres right now is only $6,000 annually. So not a big jump to take that 6 down to 0. So. And then lastly, I always like it for reference. So this is the bond run from your underwriter. This is what we basically distilled down into the project profile. What they did help provide this time is just basically illustrating what your enrollment and lease aid calculations would look like by basically pushing out those enrollment growths just basically into the 26-27 school year. And I kind of highlighted that out in the kind of the red annotation there. So that's what this financing plan, if we move forward this way, will entail, is basically pushing out that enrollment growth 1 year, and then to basically Dan's point, but we do intend to turn this building over as fast and efficiently as we can, so that you could potentially move in sooner, and you could potentially add enrollment. But in terms of underwriting and the projections and getting to closing, we're not going to assume that. This is kind of, you're able to afford it, so let's be conservative in that enrollment growth pattern, and kind of crunch the numbers that way, so to speak. So,
Did you just say we could add enrollment mid-year?
We could, and
Potentially,
we'd have to
yeah.
decide as operationally whether that makes sense,
Yeah.
because it's hard to add students mid-year and it's hard to add staff
Teachers, yeah.
during mid-year, so that would be something we would have to think about. My thought is that it might just be nice to have just a little bit more space and get used to being in the new building, because moving mid-year, there's challenges in that are more than moving in the summer, because teachers have to, one day you're teaching in this room, next day you're teaching in another space, and, all the students have to get used to it, and it's just a lot of,
Dr.
Things
Zimmer,
around it.
on the transition committee that's being formed.
yeah, so we have the expansion committee, which we've had for a long time, our facility committee. We've also added 2 additional committees, so we have an elementary advisory committee that's starting next month to engage. We have about just under 200 families that are interested in our elementary already. So we want to engage them starting early and keep them engaged as they, wait for the time to open. And then we're waiting until early winter, but we'll have a transition committee that'll look at, it's a site transition committee, kind of look at all of the processes. So anybody who signed up for it, you're not actually moving things, but just the planning that's involved with that. And we'll have a lot better idea of when we're moving, who we're moving, and what we want that to look like. So those 2 committees will also support expansion.
And they're made up of teacher, faculty, staff, stakeholders, community members.
Yeah.
I have a quick question. With the reduction in interest rates, I think you had quoted at the last meeting every quarter of a percent that the interest rate goes down, it means like 1.5 million for us or something of 1.7 million. So I know I was excited when the Fed dropped the rate by 0.5%, because I'm like, woohoo, there's $3 million. I guess I'm a bit surprised or curious then if we have that reduction of interest. When I look at this and I look at the 731 versus the 919, our bonding, and this is reflected in the other document that we're going to be talking about, went from 52 million to 55 million, but our interest rate dropped. And I guess I'm curious as to why we're going out for more money when the 52 million should go further. Does that make sense?
So we are bonding based on a payment. Okay, so the payment isn't changing.
Okay.
The amount of money we can get for that payment has gone up.
yeah, and I'm sorry, I rushed over that. That's like one of the most significant points to make. So on row 56, highlighted in red, that's the amount that is projected to be funded from Gen Ops. That's beyond the rent and lease aid payments. And that previously was reviewed and approved with the board at a $650,000 annual contribution amount. So what RW Beard is doing is holding that annual contribution amount constant and then working backwards from there. So we could reduce total development costs and reduce the Gen Ops contribution if that's the direction that we wanted to head, and that would be a decision for the board to make. But typically speaking, that's kind of how RW Beard runs these, is because rates are always fluctuating, so there's got to be something that to be held constant, and that's that Gen Ops contribution. So basically, you're able to afford more in project costs with the lower interest rate, if that makes sense.
Maybe another way to look at it is it opens up some additional, right, levers that we can pull. So we have, in the past in our discussions, said if we can't afford this, we can't afford that, because we were so tight.
Mhm.
Now, there's possibility to go back and revisit some of those things. So I think that would be, the board discussion would be, does it make sense to take the loan out for that extra million or whatever it is to get this or to get that? Yeah.
A theater.
Either
Or other
I mean, yeah,
things.
yeah, there's a number of things.
Yeah,
Right,
there-
yeah.
so we and that's one of the things that the expansion committee will be working on once we get past this
But
initial approval.
Some of them may be dictated to us by the city, right? So they may,
Yeah.
they may eat up some of that additional money that we are hoping to keep.
So we don't-
Yeah, I mean, a good example is to get within our budget, we had to just slightly shrink the width of the hallways, right? So if we wanted more room in the hallways, we can add back that square footage. That's just like one example of where we can add that.
When you say shrink, it's just a matter of inches, it's not.
Well,
Yeah,
it's,
no.
no, the hallways are still wider than any hallway we have here. It's not where you can't have two people walking next to each other down the hall.
But,
It'll be
but
much
to
bigger,
your
but-
point, Wendell, I think it might be nice, now we're sitting in a very different spot than we were 2 months ago, right?
Yep.
2 months ago is, can we afford it?
Right.
And what does it look like, right? And it looks like a little bit smaller than we were hoping, so now, with this additional $3 million, can we just revisit it? I don't think it's fair that, yeah, Kate and I decide, I think that
No.
we should be somehow
Yeah.
figuring out a good way to,
So I think one of the things we'll first go with the expansion committee and look at, and then they'll make some recommendations, and then we'll bring those recommendations back to the board for some decisions, but we're not quite to that
No.
spot yet.
I think we'll learn a lot more in the next,
Yeah,
few weeks.
the next steps here are to just wait for that traffic study, first of all, but then wait for the staff report. And then once we have the comments from the staff report, that's our chance to, if we have more in our project budget, that's the time to add back those things in as we respond back to the city. So we still have a little bit of time here.
So what we need to approve tonight, not the architect, we're putting that on hold for a while, but the reimbursement resolution.
Correct.
Which that allows just us to, we're paying money right now out, but when we close on the bonds, that allows the bond proceeds to pay back the school or the building company. whoever.
Correct. Yeah, and I'm not an attorney, so that those documents were drafted by your school council. They're pretty standard boilerplate documents, but there's a 60-day window of time where the school is allowed to be reimbursed by an ABC company for costs such as these. This reimbursement resolution, though, memorializes, it basically acknowledges that the school is spending money to pursue this project that ultimately the building company will own. So the building company will then reimburse MSA at the full financial closing. So that allows you to go beyond that 60-day window of time to recapture all of those expenses. So.
Thank you for explaining that.
So we'll have to start, well, first of all, are there any more further questions for Justin on what he's presented tonight? If not right now, send them to Dr. Hinton and she can forward them
Okay.
from there.
And I will upload all these materials, and there's a few other things into the expansion brief this week, because they're not in there. These are just hot off the presses, so we just got those.
So the first step would be to make a motion to postpone the approval of the architect's phase one contract. So is there a motion to postpone the approval of architect's phase one contract?
I'll move to postpone the approval of architecture phase one contract.
I can second, Dan.
Sean, jumping in. Moved by Kinko, seconded by Thompson. Discussion. So postpone means to move to a later date. To table would be to postpone to another date with maybe not the intent to revisit it. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion passes unanimously. So is there a motion to approve the reimbursement resolution for, I should say MSA, it's a school?
Yeah, so we did one with the building company, and now there's one for the school.
So is there a motion to approve the reimbursement resolution for MSA?
I can, so moved.
Second? Seconded by Sarah. Discussion?
Yes, I'm curious to know why Sarah's listed as the signer and not Isaac where he's the treasurer. It's just a point of clarification or
That
understanding.
she's the secretary, so she's just acknowledging that it was passed at the meeting.
Okay.
We also did some version of this
We did this in the building
in the
company
building company
too,
meeting.
yeah. So Joelle signed that because she's the secretary for the building company.
Motion by Ellingson, seconded by Harms. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Justin, for your time.
Thank you, Frank.
Thanks for coming. Future board items, like I said earlier, we will have our board goals set at our next work session. We'll have some strategic planning updates, finance training, and our data privacy training as well. Any other future items that we should be aware of?
I just have a quick question. Do business days count when school is not in session?
We're still working those days, they're
Okay.
holidays. Students aren't here, but it's still
Okay,
working.
I was not sure. And in that case, I have to say, I'm really kind of excited with 203.5 passing tonight, because that means board packets will come on Thursday nights now instead of Fridays with the 3 business days.
I think they'll still come on Friday because the meeting's at the end of the business day on Tuesday.
Pardon?
So they'll come on Friday, Monday, Tuesday. I don't think that's changing.
Okay, well,
But the packets are always, like, when you get the agenda, that becomes the packet. So as the materials are ready, Emma continues to upload them in there. So that then turns into the packet, so when you get the agenda from Wendell, you can continue to look, so as soon as she gets things, she adds them.
And things like policy and the finance reports, those are always in the folder early, so you have
Yep.
plenty of time to look at those. So it's not like you're being thrown up like against the wall with
No,
here's
it's
the
just-
information, it's.
I've
We
looked
also
before,
are in a
I printed and I
volunteer
started
position.
reading and then it changes, so then I'm off, off, so.
But Mary, you're also in a voluntary position, so therefore we need to understand that the weekend of our board meetings.
Yes,
we
I
need
know.
to designate our time for that time, so you ready? Yeah. All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll move.
I move.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Motion adjourned.